Sup guys, Grim here, and today we will discuss the most effective build for beginners to start the game. This build is based on the Sorceress and is called Frozen Orb Meteor or Meteorb or just Hybrid Sorc. This build has the ability to clean absolutely any location due to the combination of two elements, cold and fire. At the same time, in order to farm some locations, this build does not need the maximum leveling and can already be used for farming starting around level 50. Let's talk about breakpoints. They show how much you need to accumulate in particular parameter in order to achieve maximum efficiency. We're primarily interested in two parameters: the faster cast rate, which allows you to cast a spell and teleport faster, and the faster hit recovery parameter, which in case of damage allows sorcerers to be able to cast spells again faster or at least escape. For faster cast rate, we need to aim at 105%. And for faster hit recovery, we are interested in breakpoint of 86%. Other parameters such as faster run walk, which you can find for example on boots, do not particularly interest us, because this class rarely walks and usually teleports around. Let's talk in detail about the sorceress's abilities and how they work. Frozen Orb is the core skill of this build. Despite the fact that the description of the skill shows a fairly small damage number, compared to Fireball for example, Frozen Orb actually deals huge damage. When it moves forward, it releases a huge number of ice bolts, and each of them causes this damage. Therefore, if the orb passes through the enemy, then it will receive damage from all the bolts that flew out at that time. That's usually around 8 to 10 bolts. And if the orb explodes directly into the enemy, then the enemy receives damage in the amount of around 20 ice bolts. So that is around 12k damage in our case. But that's not all. Cold skills are tied to Cold Mastery passive ability. Cold Mastery reduces the current resistance of monsters, bringing it to the minimum values, which means increasing damage. If we play at Hell difficulty level, then most of the monsters have their resistance to cold at around 30 to 40%. So if we level our Cold Mastery to level 23, then you reduce the resistance of those monsters to minus 100%, which is the minimum possible value and will make them take the most extra damage. As for the rest of the skills in this branch, we'll also use a Frozen Armor, which is usually leveled by just 1 point. Frozen Armor increases our defense and freezes monsters that attack us. Then we have common skills that are used by all sorceresses: Static Field, Telekinesis, and Teleport. Teleport is the skill that makes this class one of the best characters for playthrough, and which allows her to quickly get to any location or find any bosses. Static Field reduces the current health of all monsters in radius by 25% of the current value, regardless of the actual amount of HP it has. But the skill has its limitations. At normal difficulty level, you can reduce the monster's health this way to 1 point. On Nightmare difficulty, up to 25% of initial HP pool, and at Hell difficulty to 50% of initial HP pool. Static Field is usually used in boss fights and is rarely used in battles with common enemies, at least in this build. Telekinesis is essentially just a passing spell. However, if you play in groups, then this spell will be useful to you as well. You'll be able to remotely pick up loot, open chests without approaching them, activate sanctuaries from afar, enter various portals and waypoints, so basically further increase your mobility. As for fire skills, we will use two main spells here: Fireball and Meteor. There is also the Fire Mastery skill, which unlike Cold Mastery do not reduce the resistance of monsters, but increases the damage that you deal with fire spells. Fireball is considered more standard because it synergizes well with the Frozen Orb that has casting delay. The speed of Fireball cast depends only on your FCR parameter, where you should ideally have 105%. That is why most often in various fights you will combine these spells, casting Frozen Orb first, and while it's moving ahead and is on cooldown, release a bunch of fireballs. The Meteor spell can be more effective as it does more damage, but it has a major drawback. After casting, you need to wait until it falls. So the choice between Fireball and Meteor is ultimately up to you. We suggest you try both and decide which one suits your playstyle the best. Let's look at the attributes. Strength is leveled to the point of being able to wear all the gear we need. In this build, it's the value of 156 strength. As for dexterity, as a rule sorcerers do not level it. However, if you play hardcore, then it's a whole different story, because block chance will be important to you, and you will need to increase this parameter to 75%. In order to get this value, you will have to level dexterity and wear a completely different shield, but it's justified on hardcore because the survival of the character is much more important than the damage dealt. But again, on standard softcore play, it's usually left untouched. Energy is also not leveled, except at the start of the game you can put a few points into it if you want to ease up your mana consumption. However, even if you do that, you will still need to constantly use mana potions anyway, and the remaining attribute points go to vitality. Now let's talk about equipment. We will show several options based on the different budgets and tasks sorcerers may face. It should be immediately understood that the dual element sorceress is primarily a farming character. Therefore, the magic find parameter will be extremely important, as it will allow you to find more high value items for sorceress herself as well as all your other characters. That is why a standing gear set usually includes a full set of Talrasha, consisting of weapon, a hat, chest, a belt, and an amulet. As for rings, with magic find, we can use either Nagel rings or any yellow or blue rings with the magic find. Alternatively, if you want to slightly increase your vitality, you can use Wisp Projector Ring, which in addition to magic find has lightning absorb. You wear War Traveler's boots and have Mage Fist gloves on hand. In order to further increase the magic find, in your inventory you will need to have unique charm Gives Fortune, and in order to increase your damage you will need to collect the so-called Skiller's charms. They can be both clean without additional parameters, for example +1 to cold skills, or with various stats such as plus life, plus 12% faster hit recovery and so on. But we need to remember that we have breakpoints and we need to reach 105% FCR and 86% FHR. You will receive a large amount of FHR from the Spirit Shield, but it's not enough to reach the breakpoint. To do this, you will need to carry some charms with faster hit recovery in your inventory. The swap weapons here are used to finish off bosses and various unique monsters. You don't run with them all the time, but when the boss is near death, you switch to that weapon and finish him off. This will give you additional magic find. Ideally, you should have a simple crystal sword with 6 East runes and some kind of shield with 4 sockets, in which 4 East runes are also added. With a shield and a sword, you get additionally 280% magic find, and the combined with this equipment will get an impressive 636 magic find. However, what do you do if you don't have extra East runes, Talrasha set or other mentioned things? Then we can assemble a more budget build. In this case we'll have the Oculus weapon, and over time you can put the East rune in it. On head slot we'll have a Harlequin Crest Shaco, which can drop already starting from the Nightmare difficulty. Then Scalder's Armor on Body, which itself gives a huge amount of magic find, but you can still add a topaz into it to further increase it. The amulet will be Mara's Kaleidoscope, and the shield will be Spirit Monarch. If you don't have an Arachnid Mesh belt, then you can replace it with a Gold Wrap belt, which will give you additional magic find. However, in this case, we'll lose the cast rate parameter, which will drop to 85%, which is unacceptably small for a sorceress in this build. We need 105%. So in this case, you will need to take off your Scalders and replace it with the skin of Viper Magi with the perfect topaz as well. In addition to resistances, this chest also provides a 30% FCR, but at the detriment of magic find. The final magic find with this kind of equipment will be 358. And to further increase the magic find, we can add swap weapons just like last time. However, this time we will choose a more budget option. In the hand we'll have the Blade of Ali Baba with 2 East runes socketed in it. In an offhand, we will use the rune word Rhyme, which also gives 25% magic find. Total magic find in this case will be 453%. If you think such values of magic find are too high for you, or you want to run something more combat demanding like Bale runs or Chaos Sanctuary runs, then in this case you should think about changing your equipment to be more accommodative to that, but again at the detriment of magic find. So what has changed? Firstly, in our Oculus now, instead of East Rune, there is a Javel Rainbow Facet, which gives a plus to all cold skills and additionally reduces the cold resistance of the monsters. If you don't a cold facet like this, you can use the fire instead. We add same Javels into the skin of the Viper Maggie and into the Shaker Helm. As an amulet, you will have to initially find Mara anyway. There are no good alternatives here. Same comes for the belt, you will have to find Arachnid Mesh. We use Bolcathos rings or Stone of Jordans. We can leave War Traveler's boots, but if you need more resistances, then you can change them, for example, for Aldur's advanced boots. And if you're used to poison resistance, for example, you can use Sandstorm track boots. On swap we'll have a Call to Arms weapon and the Spirit Shield. As soon as we change our weapon to Call to Arms, we have several additional skills, the Battle Command skill and the Battle Order skill. Battle Command increases all skills by 1 point. Battle Order's skill increases health and mana by impressive percentage. These buffs will also apply to a mercenary, he gets a plus to all skills and increase in health. Best mercenaries for this build can be hired in Act 2 of Nightmare difficulty. You can choose Merc either with a Might Aura or with a Holy Freeze Aura. The Might Aura increases the damage dealt by the mercenary, and the Holy Freeze Aura substantially slows enemies around. Both are viable, if you can't decide, pick the one with the Holy Freeze. What equipment options do we have for the mercenary? It is highly desirable to have the Fortitude Rune Ward on the body and Daryl's Visage on the head, into which you need to put a Javel to increase the attack speed and fire resistance. However, if you don't have this Javel, then the budget alternative would be putting Ral Rune into it. Let's try to remove the Ral Rune and look at Daryl's Visage. It has a minus 30% to fire resistance, which is very unpleasant. So we need this Javel or Ral Rune in order to get back the fire res. As for the weapon for the Merc, ideally you need to give him the Rune Word Infinity, but it's very expensive, so if you don't have it or you don't want to use it, then good alternatives are the Rune Words Obedience, Doom, Breath or the unique item Reaper's Toll. The head and chest gear pieces also has good budget alternatives. Crown of Thieves head also suits well, and even more budget option is Tal Rasha head. And you can also find Vampire's Gaze and put Rune into it. For a chest slot we can equip a budget Treachery Rune Word, or a Shaft Stop unique with the Rune inserted will also be a decent option. Now let's talk about how to distribute your skill points when leveling. The first skill point you receive is put in the Worms skill, as it will increase the mana recovery rate. At the next level a point is Firebolt and then Frozen Armor. Then we level Firebolt. At the 6th level we take Telekinesis and continue to put points into Firebolt up until level 11. At level 12 we take Fireball, our main attack skill. Due to the fact that we leveled the Firebolt previously, Fireball will receive more damage from a synergy. We level Fireball up to 17th level and take the Teleport skill at level 18. Then we continue to level Fireball up to level 24. At 25th level we begin to level our cold skills. With each new level we put 1 point into cold skills to finally be able to take Frozen Orb at level 30. Then up to level 50 we level Frozen Orb to level 20. And we put extra skill points in Cold Mastery skill in order to bring it to the value of 5. Frozen Orb will be our main attack spell that we'll use to pass the Nightmare difficulty level. However, one of the extra points that you will get after completing the quest has to be put in Fire Mastery to strengthen the Fireball spells. And then around level 75 most players will do a respec with the Kara and redistribute their points between Fire Mastery and the Meteor. As for the early equipment that we can use at the start of the game, you will need to collect items that give you various bonuses to your skills, as well as various runes and bases for them. You will need to create the rune word Stealth from the runes Tal and Eth, which drop from the Countess in the first act, and the rune word Lore from the runes Ort and Soul. The rune Soul unfortunately doesn't drop from Countless on normal difficulty, and you will have to find it elsewhere, but it drops a lot from regular mobs. For a shield we will create a rune word consisting of Ral, Ort and Tal. If you don't find these runes during your Act 1 to Act 4 progression, then you can get them from completing the second quest in Act 5. Also pay attention to your resistances, take things that gives you different resists. Upon reaching level 19, it is highly recommended to create the rune word Leaf in 2-socket staff. This rune word gives a huge number of advantages to our build and will allow your sorceress to become strong and pass the normal difficulty level without any problems. However, keep in mind that the staff that you find may be far from ideal that we have here. Our staff here initially had Teleport, Fireball and the Worms skills, but in fact it's good enough to only have the Fireball skill on it. Starting from Act 4, you may get a 4-socket Crystal Sword, in which you will need to create the rune word Spirit as soon as possible, as it gives a huge boost. Also do not forget about the Mercenary. Once in the second act, you need to take a Mercenary with a Prayer Aura. This aura regenerates your health, and we can further enhance the regeneration of your health by giving the Mercenary the rune word Insight, which is created in any 4-socket polearm. Insight, among other things, will make your mana infinite thanks to the Meditation aura, which increases mana regeneration by up to 700%. And later, in Act 2 of Nightmare, you can swap this Mercenary for another one. Where are the best places to farm as a sorceress? Firstly, this is Act 1 boss and Ariel. She is a good source of various jewelry and rings. The second boss for farming is Mephisto in Act 3. It is considered to be one of the best farming places for a sorceress because due to a teleport she can quickly find him. And if you don't want to farm bosses, then you can farm any level 85 location you like, for example the pit or ancient tunnels. In order to find the pit, you will need to teleport to the monastery and move along the road to find a passage to it. What is good about level 85 locations? They are populated with high level monsters, and as a result you can potentially get any item in game as a drop. In the pit, monsters are immune to various elements, fire, cold and lightning, but the hybrid sorceress won't have much problem with that, since she can attack with 2 different elements. To find ancient tunnels, we need to teleport to the Lost City waypoint in the second act. We'll have to jump around the desert and look for a passage to the sewers. This is also a level 85 area, and the key feature here is that cold immune monsters don't spawn here, which means the sorceress will have a great time with her frozen orb. That's it for today. If you liked this video, please leave a thumbs up, consider subscribing to the channel for more content, and I'll see you soon.